You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
This just in from the Seattle Police Department. Homicides and shootings are at 11-year record highs. If you're new here, I'm Sean Reynolds from the Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds Kline Appraisal, and your host of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Today, we're talking about Seattle Police Department again, because we've got shootings and homicides at record level highs. You might say, okay, yeah, but you're a big city. There's been a little bit of social unrest. That's true. However, we're going in the wrong direction with our police department. That is, we are defunding the police, and we've got roughly 100 police officers that are going to be let go. But I think what's happening, and we did a premiere yesterday on the fact that we had, I think, 118 police officers this year have left the police force, and 39 in September left. We had 39 police leave our police department in September. So you've got shootings and homicides going way up, 11-year highs, and we've got fewer police in the department. Oh, that's not the direction you want to go. Let's jump on in. Let's take a look. Let's see what's going on. I mean, we kind of know what's going on, but what are the actual numbers? All right. And so this is, I find with any of the police stuff, with any of the records, the crime records, Q13 Fox does the best local coverage here. Hate to say it, but Fox covers this stuff. Nobody else is covering this. Now, before we jump into that, though, I want to, ex-Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best starts her new gig as a law enforcement analyst for King 5 here in Seattle. So King 5, one of our major networks, and she's going to be providing coverage. And I think her first segment was yesterday. So it'll be really interesting to see how Carmen Best does with that new gig. She's got 28 years on the police department. She kind of bowed out at the end of the whole CHOP thing. I think she was tired. She's like, I don't need this. Maybe she had the offer to do TV. If you had the opportunity to make some really good money doing television, covering what you know, which in her case is 28 years, she's had every single position in the Seattle Police Department. If you had to have that opportunity, would you do that? Or one of the last things I saw her doing at CHOP was she was doing a news conference, and some yahoo with a megaphone was just cutting her off and just making mincemeat of her news conference. And she just stopped and she said, "That is so rude." And I was like, yeah, that is really super rude. At least let somebody talk. I know the crazy anarchists, they don't want to have anybody talk but themselves, but that's just kind of the way it goes. So if you are a 28-year veteran and you are looking at an exit, news media, not a bad gig, and she probably gets paid pretty well. I have no idea what that contract would look like, but better that than trying to outshout some Looney Tune with a megaphone who's not authorized to be doing anything other than being a disruptor. So Carmen Best, former police chief Carmen Best, I wish you the best with the best for your new gig. And I hope you're able to provide us some coverage that gives us some insight that we wouldn't have otherwise. But cruising back to the shootings and the homicides surpassed 11-year records, what we've got going there. New details have emerged about a number of recent arrests connected to arsons and violence against Seattle police officers spanning the past 2 months. Dozens have already been charged, sometimes connected to demonstrations, and suspects have been accused of serious crimes. Leadership at the Seattle Police Department say the number of shootings and homicides are breaking records across the city, and budget cuts could mean layoffs are in store at the department. Maybe, but I don't think so at the rate that police officers are quitting or retiring. They've got the blue flu. They're taking a lot of sick leave, and I can't really blame them. That's a tough gig, dealing with the nut jobs that are running around Seattle and that are dominating our headlines. We've just got this freak show going on, right? Let's just be honest. 2 people most recently charged allegedly tried to set fire to Seattle Police Department's East Precinct while people were working inside. One of those 2 also allegedly attacked a cop with a baseball bat. Did a podcast on that yesterday. You'll be seeing that come out. That officer is okay, say department officials, and is back on the beat. But Seattle Police Department's top brass say officers facing violence and threats of defunding the department push some employees to leave the agency. That was the big story. 118 have left, 39 in September alone. This can't be our new normal, said Police Department's interim chief, Adrian Diaz. This can't be our new normal. No, it can't. But for now, it kind of is. Standing next to images showing the moments before one of the Seattle Police Department's officers was struck in the head with a bat during protests in September, Diaz commended his detectives for cracking the case. So the baseball bat and the Molotov cocktail into the East Precinct, those were cases that those two people have been charged. One of them was a real estate agent. She was a realtor with a local firm here in the Pacific Northwest called Windermere. You can see more details on that in my podcast, but she's no longer a realtor with Windermere. Let's just put it that way. Arming yourself with a baseball bat and landing a hit to anyone is a brutal crime, Diaz said. This is not a peaceful protest. This is violence. That, to me, that's the best line in this whole thing. This is not a peaceful protest. This is violence. You get smacked in the head with a baseball bat. Fortunately, that police officer was wearing a helmet because it cracked the helmet. What would it have done to his skull? Not good. Court documents revealed images gathered from social media showing the moments leading up to the bat attack. The officer's helmet took the brunt of the strike, and its protective foam cracked from the impact. He was lucky, said Diaz. It would have resulted in a deadly force situation regardless if an officer was wearing a helmet or not. It could have resulted in a deadly force situation. On September 1st, Seattle Police Department says the same suspect and several others broke from demonstrators and then tossed Molotov cocktails at the East Precinct. An outdoor wall caught fire while cops worked inside. Later that month, Seattle Police Department arrested two suspects, Daniel McMillan, she's the real estate agent, and Jacob Greenberg. Investigators identified them by comparing images of them found on social media and police body cameras. So if you are a peaceful protester / violent rioter, that kind of seems like what we've got left. We don't really have any peaceful protesters left anymore. I see very little stories where it kind of highlights those. Most of them are people out causing mischief. They're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And the police are actively arresting those folks. See more and more stories on that. And I think that's great. Throw the book at them. Put them in jail. Get them off the streets. You'll have less of this nonsense to deal with. After a search of their electronics, court documents revealed McMillan and Greenberg not only planned their crimes, but also bragged about the officer attack. Greenberg allegedly corresponded with McMillan via messaging and discussed the attack, and at one point told her that he wished he didn't have a helmet on. Very nice. Meaning he wished the police officer was killed with that blow. Then in October, Brian Leal allegedly tossed a flaming stick into a Seattle Police Department cruiser occupied by an officer. Leal is charged with assault. That was a 2x2 piece of lumber that was on fire, tossed it in a car while a police officer is in the car. What a nut job. If somebody does that to me and I'm a cop, I'm sorry, there's going to be some retribution. It's not going to be pretty. And then, believe it or not, people in the media were outraged that maybe shots were fired. Oh, he shouldn't have He shouldn't have fired shots. We can't have that. We can't have police. I mean, the guy was just carrying around a little piece of tinder and it might have been lit and he might have thrown it in a police officer's car. What world do we live in where that is okay and where somebody can't defend themselves? I mean, that would have been front page news story when I was a kid and people would have gone, oh my gosh, that guy is going to do some serious time. Whoever threw the piece of burning lumber into a police officer's car. That would have been a no-go. But you know what it is here in Seattle? That's just Saturday night. That's all it is normal goings on. What happened this Saturday? Oh, we had some shootings, a couple of Molotov cocktails. This one crazy dude, he took a 2x2, lit it on fire, threw it in a police officer's car. There was some melee afterwards. But, you know, that's pretty standard Saturday. I mean, that's just normal stuff. I mean, that's pretty acceptable here in Seattle. Most people don't really think much of it. I think everybody's trying to ignore the fact that this stuff is going on. Because if you really had to deal with it, if you really had to think that that's going on in your city, then you would go, what am I doing here? What is the end goal of these people? How do we get them to stop? Here's my solution. Lock them up. Lock them up for a long time. That's what most law-abiding citizens that I talk to, that's what they talk about. The flaming stick into a Seattle Police Department cruiser. I'm not laughing at that story. It's just really a flaming stick into somebody's car, and you didn't think you were going to get caught. What goes through your mind when you're like, all right, I've got this 2x2. Do I cut it down into like a 4-foot section or a 6-foot section? What kind of accelerant do I put on it to make it flame? Because just putting a lighter onto a 2x2, that's probably not going to catch fire unless you got some accelerant on there, whether it be gasoline or maybe, I don't know, whatever you use to get a fire going. It just boggles my mind. All right, so you get the stick, you light it on fire, and then you're walking around just looking for something to throw it at, and you think, aha, my best course of action here is to throw it in that police car with a policeman in it. There will be no consequences to this. This is okay. I'm all right. The prosecutor's just going to let me go. Nothing's going to happen. This is what we're doing. Well, I hope that guy does some time, because that kind of thing is just, that's wild. That is way outside of what is acceptable in society. But in Seattle, just Saturday. Diaz says many officers have since been reassigned out of special units and are working patrol in an effort to reduce 911 response time across the city. He said the department is on track to seize a record 1,000 guns off the streets by the end of 2020, while shootings and murders reach levels not seen in the city in more than a decade, 11 years. While Diaz battles the rising number of violent crimes, he insists peaceful demonstrators also deserve a safe Seattle. Agreed. I have no issue with that. The problem I have is that so few of these have started and ended as peaceful protests. That's just the reality. If you have a peaceful protest, I'm okay with that. That includes no graffiti, no marching on somebody's home, no screaming at cops. You got to keep it peaceful. And especially no breaking into local businesses and looting. That's the big no-go. Don't do any of that. But so few of these, it seems like the folks that are left now that are protesting in Seattle, they are bent on these activities, and that's why we've got kind of this uptick in this type of activity, in this crime activity, because we don't really have any peaceful protesting left. I think that's long gone, and the narrative now is like, oh, this isn't good for anybody's political cause. This is not good. This is not good. Because people are getting hurt, businesses are getting broken into, there's graffiti, cities are being sued, the city of Seattle is being sued. Just a lot of nonsense that can be stopped. But you got to put these people away in order for that to happen. There's got to be consequences to actions. And so far in Seattle, we're kind of like, hey, you guys do your own thing. We know it's Saturday. Light that stick on fire and throw it wherever you want. That's what we're doing here. So many want us to arrest all of them, Diaz said. Our focus is to have some level of safety in this city, and we're able to respond to violent crime and address the shootings and the homicides. Diaz added, if the department loses 100 or so more officers, complying with the federal consent decree could become an issue. But so far, the numbers of cops retiring or taking jobs at other departments might mean layoffs will not be required. And I think that is what happens. And on that note, so that's it for this article, but I've got something else that was kind of cool here. I had an email from one of our YouTube viewers, and he is a police officer. And in all of my correspondence, I typically keep anybody affiliated with law enforcement anonymous because they've already got a tough enough job. And if somebody wants to question the authenticity of what I'm talking about, that's fine. But I'm sitting here reading an email, And it goes, so if police officers want to email me or reach out to me, that's great. I will always keep you anonymous because there's so many Looney Tune people out there. And I witnessed that at CHOP and Chaz and in a bunch of other stuff. And difficult job being a cop, towing the line and making sure these people stay off the streets. Seattle, it's not happening. But that's why I'm sitting here talking about this story, right? Sean, I'm a police officer in Washington, D.C. with the Metropolitan Police Department, and I also live in D.C. Been watching your YouTube broadcast since you and your team went to Chaz CHOP to chronicle what was happening regarding protesters, rioters in Seattle Police Department. You and your team do a great job producing the show. Always look forward to watching each show. One thing I've noticed from watching your broadcasts, including today's broadcast from officers quitting SPD, is that events that occur in Seattle seem to be a precursor to similar events in other large cities across the country, including here in D.C. I think that officers in my police department will be quitting in record numbers, especially as we face the prospect of dealing with more widespread riots and chaos in the aftermath of the upcoming election. Either way it goes. I thought that was super interesting. That's from a police officer in Washington, D.C., way across the country. Some people get Washington, D.C. and the state of Washington confused. One's on the West Coast, where I am. One's on the East Coast, where he is. But the perspective is that nobody wants to be a police officer and deal with this nonsense, especially people in Seattle who are getting cracked in the head with a baseball bat, or they're having Molotov cocktails thrown at their place of work, which is the Seattle Police Department's East Precinct. So thank you to the officer that sent in this email. I thought that was some great information. And yeah, that's just kind of where we're at. So as more of these stories come out and more information is kind of relayed to the peaceful protesters who are being arrested, because guess what? In so many of these instances, they are not peacefully protesting. I wish they were, because then streets would be safer and businesses would be able to do their thing and normal citizens would be able to walk around in a lot of parts of Seattle, but that is not happening right now. So as more of these stories develop, I will share them with you here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. So that's it for me on this one. Until next time, I will catch you later. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.